87. Sudan and 4 other African nations are starving because of their permanent, ever-worsening droughts and Sudan's horrific civil war. A lawful, decent world civilization would send in 100 times more food and water and 100 times less weapons. Will Europe's leaders and people even wake up and act after being swamped by Africa's impending 10 million refugee flight north of the Mediterranean? 2023 and 2024 exploded to such massive new all-time world heat records that even every pro's global warming predictions were shattered. While net human CO2 emissions will begin a slow decline from their 2024 peak, we'll still add massively more on average before reaching our potential achievement of net zero added by 2050. Does the expert-encouraged better case scenario and goal of holding temperature spike to 2.0 degrees centigrade by then include the massive plant and especially forest death increase beginning in earnest today? Would not the expected further 13% stratosphere CO2 rise finish off forests by catastrophic drought, blasting up dead wood, leaf, and soil CO2 500% of today's peak human CO2 emissions, yanking regular rainfall across continents inside of Sky River coastal floods far below human water and farm survival needs? Who besides me hammers treaty law to build and deliver new water sources to hydrate dying forests, farms, lakes, and people while rushing to grow our slower but permanent rescues, net zero human emissions, and massive atmosphere CO2 removal? Feel free to ignore me. Just bet the farm on your water manager's sewer water recycling and patching water pipe leaks while rainfall and lakes quickly fall to cracked earth human extinction. Don't believe me? Just everyone outside of coastal Sky River recurring flood zones stroll out to eyeball your own dying lakes, rivers, and plants. Hear news of desperate water conservation schemes. Consider your own bottled water warehouse before it costs $20 a quart. Enjoy it while it lasts, then die a bit later than the poor folks. Millions around dammed up Lake Travis in central Texas have boomed our population and economy faster than anywhere in America. Numerous Texas lakes and rivers, reports our Texas Water Board, will soon plunge below levels required to sustain our state's incredible growth engine as permanent global warming drought ever worsens. Water as needed to agriculture, industry, and energy will rapidly be withheld as simple household supply must increasingly come first. Lake Travis, 56% gone and dropping fast, is full of islands once lake floor. To keep it from disappearing, the Water Board imagines that it can order upstream dammed lakes to release more of their water. From all of Texas, not to mention most of America rapidly desertifying, they plan to rob Peter to pay Paul. Local and state water managers have several more bright ideas. They're asking for way more of our taxes, a permanent revenue stream, they call it, for gouging hundreds of feet down to now steadily disappearing water tables. No one can argue with their plan to repair every underground old pipe now leaking away our liquid gold. Fancy wastewater recycling technology will certainly keep our 8 glasses a day coming for a lousy few more years, until also certain to vanish residential flow to our damn toilets is history. Every authority's knee-jerk fallback to conservation only reflects their centuries-old assumption that droughts can always be weathered, because they always give way to relieving, normalizing deluges. Smile, boom population, conserve, patch, drill, recycle, wait. Pray for relieving rain return. You future ignorant idiots. Rain, rivers, lakes, and our lives are ending. Got that? Yes, get that new revenue stream, but spend it on new supply or die. Capture steaming coastal oceans evaporation on huge metal or plastic sheets just above, and next every coastal flood from global scorchings, hot ocean, sky river deluges. Then solar power pump, human farm, and community rescue everywhere inland, critically refilling lakes, and prioritize irrigation of forests before they die, destroying future environment rescue ignoramuses' vaunted net zero CO2 with the dead trees 500% increase. Yes, worldwide several trillion annually would be needed. Some for massive CO2 atmosphere scrub out to eventually bring back our rains. But only if we jump on this yesterday for many decades. Oh, never mind. I forgot that $2.3 trillion a year must always be spent on weapons to kill us all. Unless you believe the arms sellers who claim that ever more weapons only keep us safe from ever more weapons. Just try not to notice that they all keep exploding in buildings and bodies. The biggest war losers about to break out their nukes. And our entire economy depends on war factories, say the weapons dealers who campaign fund most politicians in return for emptying our treasuries for their murder money. But what was I thinking? Since 500 more wars after World War I to end all wars, who doesn't today buy the same propaganda? I admit to ranting against contract murder war for 86 speeches. But why don't you spend the 35 hours instead suing and monitoring worldwide based on the crises and solutions that you could summarize and get started on in minutes? Nearing Christmas 2024, Ukraine sent another wave of drone bombers deep into Russia, a number deliberately aimed at civilian apartment buildings. You may assume that no one was killed because you are alive yourself, as you will not be after Zelensky's next attempt at a nice body count forces Putin's 100 nukes on Ukraine, NATO's 1,000-tank Moscow invasion, and Russia's 4,000 missile end to the world. Permit yourself a tiny sigh of relief that Trump labeled American government support of Zelensky's Russia invasion and bombing as a terrible mistake. Don't trust him to fix it, though. Make him save the world and your family. How? Blow up his email and mailroom. This Christmas, the Pope called for the combatants in Gaza and Ukraine to reconcile their differences, make peace, and lay down their arms, just as every Pope every Christmas has appealed for 1,028 times. How sweet How stupid! Indeed, once a century, a few antagonists stop hacking, shooting, and bombing long enough to sign something, wash the blood and gunpowder off the arsenals, and neatly stack them in armories. Now jump your weapons factories into overdrive to rebuild, then double the weaponry, put 1% of the national budget back into farm equipment, rest and replenish the troops. Then, after letting families reunite and enjoy peace for 6 months or so, now jack their taxes, double the army, propagandize everybody into renewed hatred of the entire enemy population, also fast-tracking back to savagery 2.0, then boom, 10 more Christmases, all bloodier than the last. What's wrong with this picture? Laying down arms, called ceasefire, forever plans to make twice as many, pick them up again soon, expand every already infinite government power to invade worldwide with zero home population request or vote. That little problem easily solved by conscription, forced commission of murder. Quite the contrast to national laws jailing and even executing anyone for killing out of private passion. Peace, pretty please, but keep your top 20 war powers just in case you overrule us, sweeties and whiners. 10 millennia of such peacemaking prevented how many of the billion war killings? A handful, at least. My point? Every great arsenal allowed, kept, and redoubled was used. Don't just sign stray ceasefires. Disarm. Opposite of saving, destroy weapons. Opposite of arms making, dismantle every murder weapon factory. Not half the national tax receipts for war. Instead, 1% for border defense only. Opposite of permission, constitutional or just illegal habit, given to commanders to start and fight wars, give war power to only national legislatures, plus require full population plebiscites to approve any war more aggressive and foreign than obviously necessary fast homeland defense. Decades-old abrogated treaties outlawing attack armies and weapons of mass destruction must be enforced by every court in the world in response to your lawsuits. Obviously, bribery of leaders by weaponeers to spend 1,000 times our taxes on their shit, along with other private gifts to pawns with gigantic strings attached, must also be outlawed too. So just sue till you get it done, family lovers. How is peace made? Only by unmaking, removing lawfully every war power. We'll only prove this by accomplishing it. But this agenda and method are both overwhelmingly directed by his story. Power anarchy of top dogs, straightforward and basic enough to cause any 10-year-old hearing the universal story of greedy haters to tell their parents, to tell everybody else to can the lying bigotry for money, fury, and power, and just do it. Do what? Disarmament, army disbanding, weapons making outlawed, war power thus denied every wannabe dictator. The jury's in on 10,000 years of peace, pretty please, peace law. Now, that leaders always refused. So, fire 'em and ditch their every unconstitutional attack weapon and illegal war authorization. You lead with peace laws. hearing nothing ever but our impotent whining without challenge to 1% of their scorched earth and non-combatant murder power. The battle boys can't stop rolling on the floor, laughing until every rib breaks. If we didn't say no to you pussies, we'd be saying no to our own lovely addictive power, money, and hate. We make our war and war profits to the moon by twisting every possible private and public dollar, power, and law to our bottomless, infinite ambition. Until you peace queers figure out that you can only stop us with greater power of stronger, true, not fraudulent law, we'll just keep knocking your every chess piece off of our board, attacking your king, not to mention the powerless Prince of Peace, and kill your kids and future to the end, since we don't give a damn for our own kids' posterity either. All we want is to drive the Lincoln to a couple of years of country club senior golf before our fat, cold hearts explode. In the meantime, would you stop the hilarious bitching and blubbering about a little collateral damage long enough for us to bandage up our cracked ribs so we can get back to booty, bomb, and body piling? Please. Pretty please. Ooh, that hurts. Why have you never heard a word from one person other than this crazy about peace law that actually would work, would confront, stop, break war powers? Machinations easy enough to see if we look. Long since become war-making institutions, starting and ending with the weapons, giant attack armies, and the pro-profiteers who direct them to ride roughshod over every peace, safety, equality, and all human care constitution. We, the people, finally must choose, represented by legislatures, by declaration, only necessary national defense against invasion. Then no national population will ever be insane enough to sacrifice their own children to die in combat for foreign conquest, next risking their little kids' murder by revenge terrorism or other foreign invasion. Why have only stray, seldom ceasefire pauses, never even slowed weapons and wars to the moon? Patriarchy's 10,000-year murder domination? Why the highly likely million civilizations across the universe that nuked each of themselves gone barely a century after their first radios? Ask yourselves, what are the major occupations of most members of any high-technology civilization? School, family, work, retirement, family focus and dedication. We try to attend to our loved ones' every need, including decades ahead safety and health. 90% of us muse longingly for world peace, about 60 seconds a week until we decide, ain't ever gonna happen. Power clowns decided otherwise, so forget it. We can't stop tyrants from making war for profit. They got us all by the short and curlies, right? Even silly Steve admits that thieves and killers have the 10,000-year head start, grabbing all power, not to mention a fourth of all our income to keep it. Except as doomsday approaches, assuming that we can't dismantle the human suicide contraption makes asses of you and me, not to mention dead ducks. But rather than wasting time with powerless worry, mothers nurture families, forgetting their prehistory lesson that 2 million years of mothers protected every family with no human murder with hunting weapons law. Cull my 100 speech 40 hours to 5 words. Take charge again, moms. Fast. Ban every bomb, not one defense. Okay, that's 10 words. Dads are distracted too. Do as we're told for the paychecks. Their bosses are equally busy. Eyeball government contracts and sweetheart non-regulation. Get 'em both with private bribes to no longer public servants for re-election money, long as they twist government to our weapons, medical, dirty energy, rapacious finance, and sick care industry maximum profits for minimum benefit down to genocide schemes. An incredibly potent few percent, a couple of 100 million, work directly for the war machines. I work against them, alone, without help, for nothing. Got you my book for free. When you help, we'll live. If you don't, we'll die. All of us, fast. A few thousand academics and a number of paid professionals have designed and sometimes wave around and publicize international laws against war crimes. How does that work? For example, since World War I, the killers have deliberately bombed to pieces all thousands of hospitals they could possibly locate, trying to patch up the millions of women and kids. They already just as deliberately bombed to pieces in their well-identified, non-combatant zone private houses. Among history's total war crime tribunals dedicated to stopping slaughter of innocents, guess how many hospital bombers have been prosecuted for their bestiality? 1,000? 100? A dozen? No, 0. And the first to be convicted need only avoid international airports because peace law remains powerless to compel nations to hand over their devils. My steady listeners recall that the UN was deliberately designed to veto 194 peace beggar nations with single world bombers. For every tiny restraint to 1/1,000,000th of kill power, national governments maintain tens of thousands of enacted encouragements of death machinery and power. Virtually every bill written by the lobbyists from Murder Incorporated who write their campaign cash checks. 1 of 8 billion yells, "Stop it! Will you please make it 2? I gave merely the hospitals bombed forever with impunity example of war crime non-prosecution. Israel's confident, relaxed basis for bombing Gaza's every hospital gone, among their thousands of sorties to precisely hammer refugee camps and schools too. Overall, not 1 in umpteen million war crimes is prosecuted by the helpless finger-wagging international courts. What do we expect in a world with more weapons than people? The nuclear 1/50,000th of that number poised to kill all 8 billion of us. My point? Yes, the doomsday genie is out of the bottle. Until hearing me, though, you bought the weaponeer's lie that no law or action can destroy genocidal weapons. Why not? Destroying them would be 1,000,000 times cheaper and easier than building them. And all peace and ceasefire law and appeal now is only, pretty please don't fire off all that we let you keep loaded into gun barrels, packed into bomb bays, and smoking in silos. Every great arsenal built to be used was and will be until we destroy them all. Meantime, 100% armed truce fools deny all human nature that must jump on every opportunity from heavenly good to hellish evil. Why do you think all laws against illegal drug and murder gun use are useless in the nation with 10 times more drugs and guns available per capita than almost every other nation? Supply equals demand equals action. The worldwide peace laws I demand, 99% achieved by simple disarmament, would actually be far more possible than shutting down illegal drug imports into America or prying 420 million guns out of our loving until cold dead fingers. My 8th speech told you about National Security Council Memorandum 68, written in 1947 to replace World War II weapon and Army peace demobilization with another 100 years of Murder Incorporated enriching World War. We're closing in on 80 years of living that dream, nightmare. By 1967, conventional war that the United Nations was supposedly formed to stop had instead escalated to tens of millions more being slaughtered by the same old superpower TNT bombing. And 30,000 nuclear bombs were primed to kill every earthling 10 times. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was signed then by 189 nations for 2 purposes. First, the giant bomb holders named the pact for its billion times more insignificant reason: to keep any more wannabe nuclear bomber pipsqueaks from sneaking bits of uranium and plutonium from their nuclear power plants to build a few more bombs to worry the paranoid monsters desperate to keep their thousands a total unchallenged monopoly. So the handful of bomb holders promised to set up others with nuclear power plants, but only if the babies let the biggies handle all fissile material inflow and outflow, all for the big bullies' bombs only. My last speech, 86, covered my exhortation of every nation's world citizens to sue in your federal courts for national to international enforcement of the NNPT's Article 6, which pledged world steady work on nuclear and conventional disarmament. Unfortunately, without sufficient scheduling, detail, and enforcement, other than get cracking now to completion with strict, effective enforcement. Our legal argument is strong. Judge, find all damn corrupt reasons why 193 national signatories instead didn't do shit to even start for 57 years. And blow everyone out of the filthy water with your every federal judge's takeover. Yes, there are enormous issues and agendas of physical timed weapons destruction, totalitarian government holdouts, and verification of nuclear material and weapon location. Bomber nations that remain not subject to their own internal lawsuits to obey the treaty will continue to refuse, and any mere handful of non-bomb nations will have no economic embargo leverage to control the big shots. Current conventional war explosions in the Middle East and Ukraine that both raise the specter of Russian, American, Israeli, Iranian, and world terrorist advent of nuclear war, sprung by disasters suffered during conventional but still horrific attacks, explain the 90 seconds to nuclear doomsday midnight emergency behind our suits to fully enforce the NNPT. Conventional war now slaughtering millions across the world, directly exploding from laissez-faire or leave alone to ever grow and explode World Murder Incorporated, mandates enforcement of Article 6's requirement to negotiate a conventional, universal, total army and arsenal world phase-out. Militarized, autocratic nations, especially including those like America, with weaponeers frankly running national governments, will fully hold out until heavy economic pressure from 150 nations we win our disarmament suits in, including several bomber nations. This is the very reason that only a majority of nations can coerce world peace, and also exactly why a few bomber dictators took all power away from the UN General Assembly. I've detailed the charter change that you must sue for. How the hell are we going to get 150 more yeses, Judge, if you rule no? Every nation is the nation to profoundly recruit more, and your power will come from multiple judges offering multiple governments ever more negotiating power and cooperation. No part of our workable NNPT specifics need be put off. Who's making all this World War shit? No arms reduction to elimination treaty succeeds without all manufacturing permission subject to phase down, down, and down. Judge simply boom 2 commands from the NNPT all the way to humanity's 1,000% specific disarmament promised land. Strict and effective.